Hello, hello. Hi,
Hello.
everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Inside.net. I have with me my awesome, amazing co host, Cecil Phillip. Hi, Cecil.
Hey everybody, what's going on?
And we have with us our wonderful, gorgeous, beautiful friend, Sophie.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hey Sophie.
Hello, Cecile. Hi, Elon.
Hi. So, what are we going to learn from you today, Sophie?
So I'm going to be talking about how I test software. So I've been working as a software tester for about a year now, and I just want to share what I have learned so far. I mean, I moved from doing .NET to testing now. So
Okay.
I just want to talk about what I have been doing, and yeah, to just share my insights.
That sounds amazing. Could you give us like a little bit of background around like I don't like how did you get into software and then how did you go from you know doing just .NET into moving into testing?
Great question.
Yeah, that's actually a very great question. So, I got into software while I was in uni. So while I was in university, I studied like a biomedical course, like a biomedical sciences course. But I had friends who were like medical students and dentistry students who were into programming and data science and those kind of things. So I just used to hang out a lot with them and we would go for hackathons together. Some hackathons, well, I did at the beginning, especially, I didn't have so much knowledge, but I guess they rubbed off on me eventually and I started like picking up things. And by the time I was done with school, I decided I wanted to go fully into computer science or anything that has to do with computers really because I mean I had always loved playing around with it and solving problems with computers. So I started the first official language. Well, I mean, I was learning other languages bit by bit, but my first official training in software was a C sharp training. So I was doing this EDX CS50, and I was trying to see if I could find like a community of people I could learn with, um, like or a course that could complement EDX while I was doing it, and then I found one. But I thought C and C sharp were similar.
Similar.
So I picked C sharp. I mean, it's not true, but
They
I
lied
picked
to us.
really, yeah. So I just thought they were really similar, and I picked it up, and well, I eventually learned that they're very different languages, and
Mhm.
I didn't run away. Nevertheless, I didn't run away from what I was doing because I felt, well, at least I'm learning backend, and I feel that backend is close to the idea of C. I mean, at that time that's what I thought, that because I mean C is close to the machine, is relatively. I mean, you can't call it a low level language per se, but as compared to a language like Python and C and yeah, and C sharp, like C is closer to the computer. So I just thought, well, C sharp is this particular training is a backend training, which is still a bit close to the machine, like to the infrastructure and stuff. So I just kept on doing my C sharp. So I did internships and more trainings, and but at a point I took a break and I went into IT support because well, different reasons, but one reason was because I felt I needed to really explore different fields that I had interest in. Like
Mm.
I knew what I didn't want, but I wasn't sure of what I wanted. So the opportunity to do IT support came up. I'm like, okay, well, I could just try this out, and to give me more time to self learn. So I took a break from
Yeah.
like internships and started doing IT support, and I started doing kept on learning, kept on working with friends on projects, and then I even did the .NET show. It was fun.
I
I talked about
remember I was there in the
yeah,
chat.
yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, woo!
Yeah, Ella is always there. So yeah, yeah, so then eventually I finished with that job, and I actually intended to go back to C sharp, but I came across the opportunity, and they actually just wanted senior C# devs. But I thought it was a good company. But they were like, okay, you could come in, but you have to work as our QA person, if and then move into backend if you want. So I got in and I started doing QA for them. I didn't even know this job role existed, but I just know I want to work with these people because I think they're really good.
Mm-hmm.
So I just got in and started doing software testing. I started reading books. This guy, Glenn Myers, I think it's like a classic book on software testing, but it flew right over my head because I couldn't really understand most of what he was talking about. So yeah, but I just kept on doing it. And so eventually my boss asked me to choose, okay, do you want to go ahead with QA or do you want to move now into backend? And then I'm like, well, I'm enjoying QA, so I think I would continue for now. So I don't know what the future brings, but for now, I'm loving it, and I have the opportunity to work with people who are doing great stuff in both development and testing. And from time to time, I still join in the development efforts, but usually not what I'm testing. I sometimes help with development, but testing is my full-time role, and I love it. So yeah, that's about it.
So just to make sure I'm understanding, so QA is what involves the testing, correct?
Yeah. So QA is like quality assurance.
Quality assurance.
But I just call it software testing because over time, some people there's this discussion going on about how a QA person may not necessarily be assuring quality. And I think that's the case for me because I'm a junior tester, and I mean, there are some decisions that can be made by me, but I mean, there are some more senior QA people who can actually make decisions that shift the needle. So, but since I don't have that, I haven't gotten up to that stage yet. I feel like what I actually do is testing the software. So whether the bugs are fixed or not, my direct job is to make sure that I find these bugs. So yeah. So
yeah.
What is your
No, I'm sorry. You go ahead, Milan.
I was just gonna ask, what is your favorite part about software testing? Because like how you said that your boss came to you and they're like, okay, is it this or is it the back end? What made you identify like, hey, I'm having fun with this? Like what stood out to you and what was it?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question and very important question because I actually found testing a bit boring at the beginning. So I was like, what is happening here? Like, I'm not even trying to fix the bug. I need this adrenaline rush. So but I kept on complaining to my boss that this thing is so boring. I mean, I not really complaining, but like from time to time, I would just chip it in and say, I'm not really having fun with this, but I'm just going to keep trying. But I did this course called Rapid Software Testing, and it blew my mind. Like I felt like I now understand testing as it should be. So in the course they try to put testing as a way of really like first of all you go into testing with the mentality that you would find bugs. So you don't because I think the reason why it became boring to me was because I was going into it with the mentality to fix bugs because I mean I had been doing development for some time. So I don't want to see bugs as a developer. I don't want to see bugs.
Right?
I run away from it. But I needed to change my mindset and say, oh, I'm 100% convinced that there's bug on this system. Like now I see bugs everywhere, even on WhatsApp. Every single software I open, every single software I see bugs all over the place. I'm like, what is happening? What is happening here? So I think it's that mindset shift that really did it for me. Like I needed to be convinced that I know I'm going to see bug. I just need to find it. Even after finding the bug, I would still be convinced that there's more. It's just that I just can't see it yet. So, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's a different set of eyes. Yeah, I love what you said about the mindset shift. And then, because I was thinking it really is a perspective shift. When you are learning how to code, you want to avoid creating any type of bugs. But it's like now as the QA, you're wearing a different hat and a different like set of glasses. And you're like, okay, let's find it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it reminds me of like years ago, not that long ago. I'm not that old, but a couple of years ago, I remember like software testing was like all anyone talked about. It was like the biggest thing. You know what I mean? Because like in the industry, we go through these waves. Like right now, like AI is the wave, and that's all anybody's
Ooh,
talking about.
point it out, call it out.
And I remember there was a time when like software testing, I'm serious, like it's like AI everything. Like I want to AI my fridge, right? And like software testing was all anyone talked about. And like when you looked up job descriptions on LinkedIn or wherever, it was just like we need testers, we need testers, we need testers. It's such a thing, right? And I remember the company that I was working with at the time, for you to become a software engineer, you had to go through the testing program first, right? So like you had to know how to test the software before they would let you write the software, which is kind of interesting. So it was very much of like a test first mentality. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? And
Yeah.
even with that, like testing, because in this industry we like to make things confusing, right?
that's
And,
hilarious.
and at that point, like testing meant so many different things. So there was like the test that the developers wrote, right? But then there was a separate testing. There's a separate QA team, right? At least at the company that I worked at, and I'm sure every company has their own structure. But it was like, okay, well, for me to close this ticket, this work item, right? Like I have to write the code, and it has to have a certain level of tests done, right? A certain level of test coverage. But then after that, it will still go to the QA team, and they'll go through different types of testing. It'll be performance testing, it'll be stress
Yes.
testing, it'll be functional testing, it'll be A/B testing. Like it's a whole gambit of different things. You know what I mean? And I think if I'm supposed to fast forward today, right? Like if unless people have like a really good mentor, like a testing mentor to show you how to do it, like I can completely understand why you would say, "Oh, this is boring."
Yeah.
Right? Because without having the perception of the entirety of what can happen here, if he was just like, "Oh, you really just want me to sit here and click buttons? Like, you serious? Like this is what it is?"
Honestly.
Right, but that's what you feel, right? Because no one told you, right? Like no one gave
Yeah.
you the
Yeah.
information, right? But then after you
Yeah.
got the
Yeah.
information and you got again perspective, now you're like, oh, okay, well I can try all of these different types of things, and what if I ran these types of scenarios, or what if I flipped it upside down and shook it?
Yes.
Right? Like, does it still work? You know what I mean? And so I find like testing can be really exciting, right? Because it's almost like a scavenger hunt, right? Like you're going in and you're trying to discover all the secret tokens and hidden pathways and all the things that you could probably find, and think about, if I was a user, how could I exercise, this path, right? Like,
Yeah.
like if it's already deployed, like how would a user get here if they were supposed to like click buttons or whatever, and then is that a good thing or not?
Yeah. That's so interesting.
Yeah, I actually do agree with Cecile. Like the whole thing of how, from a developer's point of view, what a developer would see as test would be like the unit test and all those test cases. But then it would get to the QA team, and then there's like stress testing and performance. Like it's a whole lot, and it can get. I think the adrenaline rush was really important for me. So
Yes.
when I found that in testing, I'm like, wow, this is it for now at least.
I got you. So tell us, what kind of testing do you do now? Like I know you're doing tests with .NET, but like what kind of, like, do you have a particular type of test do you do? Do you do like
That's a great
benchmarking
question.
and stuff like that, or is it mostly like functional testing?
Okay, so most of the time, like the thing I do most of the time is like making sure that when the developers implement features, that they actually work fine.
Okay.
But then, I mean, that's usually the immediate thing that needs to be done, because I mean, it's like, oh, this feature has been implemented. Is it working fine? Oh, pass it to QA. But then, when that isn't happening, I try to. Well, I'll talk about it more, but I try to understand the system more, and then look for hidden features. Like try to really see what needs to be tested, what can be easily ignored, what are the areas that can easily have bugs, and like so it's more of me thinking about it and then trying to implement it. So I use all these things like the functional and the stress testing as tools. So I now know that, oh, okay, because this area, this particular feature is going to be used a lot by the users, I need to do a more stress testing here. So all these
Mm.
other things are like tools for me to use. But I now understand testing more as a way of thinking, just the way coding isn't just like writing. I mean, programming isn't just writing code or software development. It's not just writing code. Like they're trying to solve a problem. They're trying to think of the best way to solve the problem, and then the code comes in as a tool for you. So
Yes.
for me, testing is more of how I think about software and how I try to make sure that um, at least as many bugs as possible are found before it goes into production. So all these other tools, as I need them, I learn them. So if I need to do some stress testing, if I need to do some performance testing, I do it. So it's based on the scenario, like the different and the different kinds of softwares that I have to test because there are different
Mhm.
types at different points. So I don't just say, "Oh, I'm a perfect performance tester." I'm just going
Yeah.
to be doing performance testing all over the place. So but I just try to understand the scenario, the scenario, and then try to
Hmm.
now see what fits it. And if I don't know it, I just go and learn it. So
Yeah, that makes sense. So
yeah,
why don't we talk a little bit about what kind of tools do you use to test?
okay.
Great question.
Like what is your, QA tester tool set kind of
Hmm.
look like?
Hmm. That's good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I learned to even have like a bookmark. To make it easy to find, like a bookmark of interesting tools I find. At first, I used to keep it on my Notion notes, but I found out that keeping it on my bookmark on my browser made it easier. So
Mm.
different things, like I said, for different scenarios. So first of all, like depending on the company, like at my company, we use Azure. Yeah, go Microsoft. So yeah, we use Azure DevOps, but then I mean, different companies use different things, but at least that's what I use most of the time. And then so there's this like a Chrome extension called Bug Magnet. I love it because it comes up with like different data sets that you can use to test. It's one thing that gets devs really upset because I would just try testing a text box with like 5,000 characters, and they're like, "Why are you doing that? Who's going to do that?" But I just want to see what happens if I do that. Like, is the whole software going to crash? But then this magnet is useful because I don't have to go around looking for 5,000 characters. I just right click, go to bug magnet, and then paste invalid email addresses, like different data sets. Then for my note taking, because I try to take a lot of notes, I use Notion, but recently I have been using like paper and a pen because sometimes
Mm.
I need to really understand
Yeah.
what is going on. Yeah, what is going on. So what else? What else do I use? I'm trying to think.
Do you
So
do you test by
automation,
yourself?
yeah, by myself. Oh,
Well,
sorry, how do you,
is there like a team? Like, do you all test? Because, and
yes.
I'm asking because you said that you write stuff down on
Mm-hmm.
notes, which is good.
Yes.
But then,
Yeah.
if you have a team of people testing, like, how do you
Share
distribute
the
those
share
notes to
Share.
like everybody?
Yeah, yeah. So the I work with a team of testers, but they don't need to they don't need to see my notes because the
Oh,
notes are for
okay.
me
It's
to
not
just
those kind of notes. I got
understand.
it.
Yeah, just for me to understand the software. Like
Hmm.
I'm trying to make sense of it. So the only things that the other testers need to see are the bugs I create, and most of the time we talk
Yeah.
about things. So I share the bugs with them, and then I tell them, "Oh, this is what I find," and then we start talking about it. But like the notes are mostly me trying to understand the software, like trying to make diagrams and stuff like that. Sometimes I share my Notion notes. I mean, I think I've shared it like once with the senior tester. I guess she just wanted to understand my whole testing, like how I test. But anyway, it's not. It doesn't really happen so often that I need to share those notes. But I mean, if they ask for it, I can. It's not like they're like personal
Hmm.
notes. If they ask for it, I can. But um, most of the time, I just keep them to myself and try to revise them. Yeah,
Hmm.
to understand the software more.
And I want to go back to where you were saying before. It's called Bug Magnet.
Yes, bug magnets. It's like an extension. It's an extension or the Chrome
Yeah.
extension. And then I just remembered some other ones that I use. So depending on which one is available, I use a lot of screen recorders very, very often. So now I find Jam really wonderful because when I take screenshots, it also takes notes of what's happening in the console and the network tab, which is really useful for the devs. So Jam, and then I also sometimes use Loom, but sometimes I find it
You
a bit
said
heavy.
Bloom? Like
No, Loom, Loom, Loom.
Loom. Okay. Never heard of
Okay.
that.
Yeah,
Loom. Loom.
yeah. I find it a bit heavy. Like when I found Jam, began to find Loom heavy because it seems Loom is more of like for meetings and stuff. But
Oh wow.
sometimes, yeah, sometimes I just use Loom because maybe I need some particular feature that Loom has. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
Um,
heavy.
yeah. And then Azure DevOps also has this extension. I think it's called exploratory testing. I think that's the name,
Hmm.
something like that. But
Yeah.
sometimes I haven't used it recently, but for some time I used to use it to like quickly take screenshots, and it would be able to like take all the required, like the context of the bug, like um
Mm.
your system information, what test case you were looking at, the test case you were looking at when you took the screenshot, all those kind of things.
Hmm.
So sometimes I do that. And then also the test runner on Azure DevOps too is also really useful because when I create bugs through the test runner, I I also see that the test cases are listed, and the one that fails or the ones that fail is listed or are listed. Yeah, and then also because I take screenshots, I use like very simple image editing applications, like this 3D photo. I'm just going to confirm the name. Paint 3D. Paint 3D. I love it because of the oval shaped shape that I can place on top of things to
Hmm.
like highlight them. Yeah. So that I use often, and then just the normal Windows screenshotting too. I use that. And then also many browsers
Oh my
to
gosh, I
like test.
bet.
Yeah, yeah, I test like on Opera Mini, on Mozilla, on Chrome, on Edge, on Brave, different
Okay.
browsers. Yeah, yeah, and then also Postman. I use Postman, but just now because Swagger, I find that Swagger does at least most of what I need from Postman. So I just use Swagger.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I just use Swagger most of the time. Yeah, I haven't. I have Postman, but I don't use it so often. So I just use Swagger. What else? There's so many tools I use.
Yeah.
That's a lot
There's
of
even this new
tools,
tool I even
Sophie.
installed, Power Toys, because I was trying to. In fact, I was trying to make sure, like, I needed to explain to the dev a particular bug, and I needed to explain like that, like it was a thing of dimension. So this Power Toys is, I think, it's like a power user Windows application, like
Yeah.
something you get when you just want to do like extra stuff on Windows. So I installed it so that I could actually show the length between, like the space between. So there was this text in the box, so I needed to show the length between the ends. I don't know how to put it. So like the way you have a button and then there's
Mm.
text in the middle. So I needed to show that the spaces by the sides were not equal. So I got that too because it actually wrote it, like it showed how much how much length it has, and yeah. So there was a particular tool inside of Power Toys that I use, like a dimension tool. So yeah, so different other tools I use from time to time, but I think these are the ones that come to mind now. Yeah.
One of the things I was wondering when you listed all of those different browsers, do you have like automation that runs and like runs all of that for you, or are you like
Hmm.
manually opening and kind of like clicking through and taking screenshots and doing notes?
So right now I don't run automations. I plan to, but I've been a bit skeptical because I fear the overhead cost of automating some things. I mean, it should be good long term to go back and look at the results of the automation, but my concern is I would then have to manage the code of the automation. I would have to manage the artifacts that come out of the automation. So I haven't yet. I'm not yet convinced, especially with the product we're building. It's not. I don't think I need to automate it yet. So yeah.
Could
So but
you
now I just manually do it. Yeah.
could you talk about what automation even looks like when it comes to
Yeah.
testing?
Yeah, sure. So, actually, just a little intro. When I started testing, I just felt, oh, okay, maybe I need to automate everything and anything I do because, I mean, I was coming from a development point of view. But then I learned that that may not be the best solution all the time because then you would, I feel like it's sort of you just give give the automation power like you don't take the time to really look at the software. You're like, oh, don't worry, I'm going to automate it. But then
Oh,
some
okay.
because of additional features that are added, the automations may become stale. You need to update them, blah 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 blah.
Mm,
Anyway, but really, anyway, what automation really is, for example, like Cecil asked, I mentioned different browsers, and then I'm like, I know that I need to test this small feature, this little feature, but I want to test it across different browsers. So I set it up with an automation tool. I'm trying to think of anyone that can come to mind. What can I use? I'm not sure if Cucumber does that. I'm not sure.
mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not sure. Since I haven't done automation lately, so I can't really think of a particular software now. But
Yeah.
I mean, just set up the automation with a particular tool of your choice, and it runs it. Maybe you can set it to run every day or every hour, that kind of thing, or you can press a button and it runs. And then another one also is also the thing of tying it up with your deployments so that it runs every time you want to deploy. So it's like this CI/CD thing. So
Mm-hmm.
the tests just run and it tells you how many tests were successful, how many were not successful. So it's actually a really cool thing and it's really useful. So, but I just haven't done it yet.
Yeah. So is there a worst and a best browser when it comes to like testing? Like, does anything like that ever come up?
Well, I would say no, but it also depends too. Because, for example, there was a time we had this bug that would only happen in Chrome. Like it would just keep the cache. You would clear your cache, but to just keep it. I mean, it was a software issue. I don't know if it was well, maybe it was a Chrome thing. It has to do with Chrome, but that issue just stayed only in Chrome. It
Chrome.
didn't happen. Yeah, it didn't happen across board. But I don't think it's because Chrome is bad. I think it was just the situation because I mean there are times when it could happen in another browser. But then what I could say is that maybe to help the testing process is to be aware of something because my assumption is that because Microsoft Edge and Chrome are Chromium based, I feel like
Hmm.
whatever happens in one of them should happen in the other. But it's not always the case, though. It's not
Yeah.
always the case. So yeah, I think it's good to check. Oh, what infrastructure is under these different browsers? Like for example, Mozilla is very different from Chrome because it's not Chromium based, as far as I know, and Opera Mini too. So I guess it's to just understand what is happening underneath each of these browsers and then decide, and then also knowing what your users would use. For example, if you're in an environment that the users mostly use Google Chrome, maybe office computers like in government offices that usually come by default with Google Chrome, you know that you
Okay.
need to do more tests with Google Chrome. But if you're going to have like power users, you should try other kinds of of browsers that even the ones you may not think anybody would use, but you know that always are like maybe developers, for example, they would use this kind of browser. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always found browser testing to be so challenging because it's like
Hmm.
it's literally like a matrix, right?
okay.
Because and I say that because you can think about how browsers are today, right? Like when is the last time you updated your browser? You don't, right? Because
I don't even think to do
it happens
that.
for you, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes,
so
yes.
when you think about that, now you're like, okay, I'm running a test suite. Oh, what version of this am I testing? I don't know. A lot. A lot, right?
Oh my
Because it's
gosh,
like,
that's a
okay,
point.
you know what? Maybe on my
Mhm,
personal machine, I always get latest because it
mhm,
just
mhm,
does it for me. But then if I have customers or users that are behind a firewall at work, usually
mhm,
like
mhm,
your work, like on work as in like in a corporate environment, usually they're going to be like, okay, we're going to control like how fast these updates happen because we want to test it
mhm,
to make sure it's secure for our environment. And
mhm,
usually you don't know what that minimum version is, right?
mhm,
And
mhm.
again, because browsers update so fast, right? Your version could be the October 2022 version of Google Chrome, or it
Mhm.
could be the June 2023 version of Google Chrome.
Shut
I don't know.
up. That is a
You
lot.
see, so now you have this matrix of, well, okay, I'm just gonna do minimum, um, like most common denominator, right?
Mhm,
But then I'm
mhm,
still just talking about one browser. You know what I mean?
mhm,
And then
mhm,
how
mhm.
does that run on like my phone, and how does it run on my tablet? And then what
Yeah.
about Safari? Because
Mhm.
Mac people don't install browsers, right? So what does that mean about Safari? What does that mean about Microsoft Edge, which is I guess technically Chromium, but like it's tweaked, right? And
Mhm,
then
mhm.
there's Opera. I use Opera, but
Really?
as along with some other browsers. But like now you're looking at this whole gambit of, oh man, I gotta test
Different
this,
browsers
and this, and this, and this. That's
and
why I tell
different
people like testing
versions.
is not boring. Like there's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff that you have to
Yeah.
think about when it goes into
Mhm,
testing. And one of the
mhm,
reasons
mhm.
why, at least when it comes to browser testing, because we're particularly talking about the browser, because there's games and other stuff, right? There's other stuff that we
Yeah.
can talk about.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when you talk about browsers, it is such a matrix of what's the combination of things that I'm testing. Because you know what? Along
Yeah.
might have a Windows computer with a version of Chrome that's like, I don't know, maybe her version of Chrome is like a month older than mine. You know what I
Mhm,
mean?
mhm.
But like we're seeing
Yeah.
different bugs. You know what I'm
Different
saying?
bugs. Yeah.
What you gonna do? You gonna go to every user and tell them to update their browser? You can't do that.
Oh my God.
That's
No.
not a practical thing for any of us as software
Yeah.
developers to do, right? Like so we gotta think about,
Yeah.
okay, well, how do I manage this in like a reliable way? Which is another
Mhm.
reason why I'd asked the automation question earlier, because
Yeah.
I think based on knowing your audience, right? Like knowing, okay, my audience of customers uses this collection of browsers, right? And like I don't know, you might have a chart that has percentages, like I don't know, 40% use Chrome and 20% use Edge, and everything else just kind of trickles off, right? And you kind of determine in your head, okay, these ones are the most important, and I'm going to do these, and I'm going to like cross my fingers and hope, oh, okay, well, let's hope everything else just kind of works until someone
Yeah.
else kind of files a bug or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I feel you. But I was even as while you were speaking, I also thought about the thing of um, well, this thing of automation again. I think it's important to, like you said, know who your users are, and then
Mm.
um, make the automation decisions based on that. But I think the problem could the problem I mean that I encountered is most of the product that I have been testing have been for have been products that haven't hit market yet.
Yeah,
So
Mm.
yeah, so I don't even
that's
know.
hard.
I mean, I have an idea of who the users would be, but I
Yeah.
don't have like a realistic idea.
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah,
just an
that's hard.
assumption.
That's hard.
Yeah, so that's why. Well, I mean, automation could work. I could just use my guess and do it, but
Mm.
I don't know if I see the need yet. So, but
Yeah,
my major fear is usually I would have to spend to divide my time between maintaining the code if it's a code based automation. I mean, there are no code tools, but I don't know. I just feel like I could just spend more time testing now. The need would come up later, and I would move.
yeah. No, I got you. I got you. You know, in the past, the situations that I've seen like that, what people have done is they'll have a like an insiders group, right, or
Mm-hmm,
something like
mm-hmm,
that, like a or early early adopters group, right? Like a
Yeah.
controlled group of people
Mm-hmm.
that you say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, I know what you're using, I know how you're using it, and I
Mm-hmm.
know, I don't know, I know something about the behavior of these people, right? And
Yeah.
behavior in terms of like, how they use it, the utility that you're building. And at least then you can be like, okay, well, for this group of people, this is how they're using it, and I could like, I could orchestrate my testing for those types of folks. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm just
But
taking
even
notes
if you
of what
don't
you're
have that,
saying
so that makes
because
it
it's
hard. Because again, not everybody has that, right? Like that's assuming that that's available. But if it's not available, now you're
yeah.
kind of just like, well, works on my machine, so
Yeah.
I'm great.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. I don't
I
know what
mean,
problems you have.
it's
You need
still
to
a
update
good,
your
it's still
browser. You know
it's,
what I
I
mean?
mean, still a good thing to check out. So I mean, I just took note of it, and I think it's a good idea too. So I'm
Yeah.
learning too.
Yeah. No, for sure, for sure.
Should we
But like I said,
dive
I think
in?
testing is very exciting, and I think there's just so many different tools
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
that you can play around with. You know what I mean? Um,
mm-hmm.
when you test .NET software, I know folks usually have some type of patterns they follow or structure or like testing methodologies. Do you have any particular things that you follow, or do you kind of just is it one of those it depends on like the ticket or the work item kind of thing?
Well, so I also recently learned about this thing called heuristics, where you just have like some like tools in your head, like maybe acronyms of quick ways of testing, things that would make testing easier. So I try to learn from other people's heuristics. Since I mean I've been doing software for just a year, and um, I have had to test the API like just twice, and I try to learn from other people's experience. Recently, I even had to even speak to some people, like some friends who do testing, to understand how they go about their testing, and I got some points from them. Some of which are, well, first of all, trying to um, so now, for example, the present software that I'm trying to test on Swagger, the first thing I had to do, for example, was just simply to log in. That was difficult because that was when we realized there was a problem with the login. So first of all, I had to even test out all the authorizations and all. So then, when that whole thing was sorted out, I had to like play around with it, playing with the data that I sent to it, like with the bug magnet, for example, that I mentioned. Like trying out different like wrong data types, like sending wrong data types to the API and see how it behaves, what kinds of errors it sends, and really looking at errors. So I also try to have at the finger of my fingertip to never forget to look at the log. I mean the what comes out. Like I mean you can say, oh yeah, it's a 200, oh it's a 400, it's a 404. Like really to look at it and understand. Sometimes it's easy to jump right through it and say, oh, it doesn't just work. But if I feel like understanding it helps me later on, so I know, oh, this could happen in this particular place again. So I just take note of it and I try to look out for those kinds of things. So I mean, yeah, it's also one of those things that it depends. But I don't think I have like particular heuristics for just .NET applications. So I just look at, oh, I'm testing an API, what's happening. So, but I also foresee, like, for example, with this present software I'm working on, I foresee that I need to go a bit deeper to look for more .NET specific problems. But for now, at least with the APIs I've been trying to test, I haven't had like any .NET specific heuristic, like I said. So yeah, and then also because even though it's .NET backend, but I've also tested a lot of front end applications, and I also see some things that happen because of the particular framework that's being used in the front end. So, for example, I don't remember the exact bug that happened, but then I realized that while talking with the dev, we realized that this bug happened because it was Angular, like, and there was something that we didn't check. I don't really remember the details, but I remember that's happening. So, but I know I've taken note of it somewhere. I just don't remember what
Yeah.
happened.
I was
Yeah.
gonna
So,
say, did you want to dive into your presentation?
oh yeah, sure. I
Yeah.
can. Sure.
It looks so cool. I want everybody to see it.
Okay. So shall I commence?
I'm just trying to pull up your screen. Yes, you can.
Great. Okay, so hi again. So I just want to talk about how I test. I just do I because I just want to any good thing that you see here, I always do my employer and my all the people that have gone through trainings, but all the bad things is just me. All the things that don't go well. But anyway, this is really how I personally test. So not really speaking for everybody. So some major things that I carry out in my testing activity that involved in my testing activities. First of all, I have to learn the product. So I'm just talking about what goes through my mind when I am approaching a particular product. So first of all, I usually have to learn the product, learn like understand the product, and then design a test, and then to actually do implement the test design, and then report the bugs, and then I just want to talk a bit about test cases. But then all these things don't necessarily happen after the other.
Mhm.
Sometimes I repeat some, sometimes I go back, sometimes they all happen at something like for example, I could be designing a test and be testing at the same time. I could be learning a product because while learning, I'm trying to see what the product is about and then I could find bugs. So sometimes some even happen at the same time. So first of all, learning about the product. So looking at it first of all from the angle of black box testing, which is really me approaching the software without having like technical details, like really understanding. I don't know anything about the software. I didn't know how it was built. I just want to understand the software first of all.
Mhm.
So this happens often for me, at least when I just got into my present company, it happened where I had to um, do a black box testing for a product that was in development. I mean, it had
Mhm.
already been pushed to production, but I mean, it was still in development. So I had to do some black box testing. So it helps me to learn the product. And it leads me to the second point of product maps because while learning the product, I usually have to come up with some form of mental model that that I need to make physical. Sorry about the noise. So some kind of maybe I need to draw. I'll use a tool like Miro, miro.com. I dot com or dot oracle. Miro, I use the Miro tool sometimes to come up with product mappings. And then while coming up with these maps, I sometimes use requirements, the requirement documents if they are available, to help me understand the software and to also help me to test better. Then I highlighted interpretation here because something that happens is that sometimes what is written in the requirements may not actually, I mean, my understanding may not actually be the understanding of the dev or the understanding of the other tester or even the understanding of the user. So I try to make sure that my interpretation actually is the same as for the stakeholders. So that's for example the user and at least the person who like my boss, at least because I believe my boss should understand it as well as the user. So my understanding needs to be the same as this major stakeholders. And then I come up with these models. So while doing this black box testing and understanding the product, I do a lot of journaling, either on my Notion notes or my hard copy, like my book. I mean, journals like still me trying to understand the products, like coming up, understanding who are the people involved, who's what's the role of this person. Like, I mean, as far as the users, for example, like oh, okay, this part is for the administrators, the admin. This part is for the customers. Like trying to
Oh my
understand all those
gosh.
relationships. Yeah, sorry, is anything wrong?
No, I just said, oh my gosh, that's a lot of like different aspects to
Okay.
consider.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so I just have to break all of that down so that while I'm testing, I have the correct idea in mind. And then still about learning the product, I have to do some, well, I don't have to, but I find peer testing interesting. So sometimes with devs, sometimes with other testers. So with devs, for example, I could sit down with dev. I'm like, oh, I tried doing this thing and this happened. Can we look at it together? And then we go through it, and then sometimes I could be wrong, and they'll be like, oh, this is not how you're supposed to do it. Like this is not what you're supposed to do. And then I'm like, oh, okay, then you need to clarify because the user may do the same thing I did. So yeah, so peer testing with the developers are really helpful for me and for the product and for the developers too. And then also peer testing with other testers, sometimes through video calls, because like it's a remote team, or sometimes through text. Like I'm like, oh, I tried this thing and it doesn't work, and they're like, oh, I tried it too, but this is what I got. Oh, I'm going to send you a screenshot. I'm going to send you a video recording of what happened in my case, and then we find out that we're experiencing different things, those kinds of things. So peer testing helps in learning and understanding the product. And then team discussions, like having meetings, like the way you have agile meetings, scrum meetings, and those kinds of things. So those help as well in understanding the product. So, but the summary, the primary goal of learning of this step is to make sure that I really understand the product and I'm able to, at the end, come out knowing what needs to be tested, or at least basically what needs to be tested and how best to test. So because I understand the product and I know that all these areas are more important, and that okay, this one will come up in my priority list. And then it also helps me to collaborate to work better with other testers and with the developers, because then if I understand it, I don't come up with with bugs that are not related to, because sometimes there are bugs that are out of context, or because something that happens, for example, is maybe the requirements wasn't very clear, and I came up with a bug that wasn't exactly what the requirement said, and then and then they're like, it's not a bug. I'm like, but it's a bug, it's not working. I'm like, well, no, this is not what the requirement said, or this part hasn't been built yet. That kind of thing. So when I understand the product, it helps me to come up with higher quality bugs. Like that really, bugs. There's a scale of the importance of the bugs, but just because some things are more important than the others. So I need to come up with more high quality ones, and less of other ones. And those other ones are still good, they're still important, but those higher quality ones like really shift the needle. So then test design. So with this designing of the testing, sometimes it doesn't really happen at all. That's why I'm saying that as the feature is being released, I test. So sometimes I don't initially have a design. I just get into it and just test. Excuse me, but it's important for the long term, because then I know that okay, this is the framework I have in mind to approach testing for this product. Then the other point is about um, based on the ideas I get from the product exploration earlier, I'm able to begin to um, implement the testing already. So in this case, an actual test design may not come up, but I may have like a rough sketch of these are the things that need to be done, these are the things that are really important, and I just get right into it. And then client feedback. So sometimes the design is based on what the client says is important. So I know, okay, I need to spend more time testing this particular thing. And then the thing of automation, just to talk about it, is that during the test design stage, I can get to do a lot of setup automations if need be, decide on what needs to be automated, and set up all of that. So at this stage, I do all of that setting up, but I still qualify it as being part of the whole testing process. So that's why I say it spills into the main testing. Sometimes, like the designing of the test, sometimes happens at the same time as I'm really testing. So yeah. So the main goal of this design is to make sure that all the notes I have gotten from trying to understand the software, I actually use these notes. Like I actually implement them for the good of the software, and I'm able to really identify the important areas and really implement these ideas for testing. So now for this actual testing, so even though in the testing industry there's a lot of test cases and all, but when I started testing, I actually didn't know about test cases. I just started like understanding the software. But then I later realized.
She's coming back.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear you now.
Beautiful.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, a call came in. So yeah, I was saying that for this actual testing, um, for the test cases, at first I didn't used to do test cases, but I started working with other testers, and then I realized that, oh, okay, test cases could be good for regression testing, and so that's why I now work with test cases. So it also helps with automation, like I said, because then you know that, okay, these are the things that need to be tested all the time. So I can set up automation around these things. And then also, like I said, in the design stage, this is when I implement all those ideas I got and all those feedback I got and all the notes and all those kinds of things. And I think I've spoken about all these tools that I use for my testing. So at this stage, that things get really interesting. So the major goals of this stage are to ensure that the product works as expected and it doesn't act unexpectedly. Like, for example, if I click on a button, it doesn't, I don't know what, send me an SMS. It doesn't do something weird. And then also to prove that there are still bugs. So I need to really test and show that, oh, this bug still exists. I need to just put it, not really in a confrontational way with the devs, but like just to help us to see that we can still improve the quality of the software. And then now for the bug reporting stage, I put language first because the language in which bug is reported is really important. Um, it's not a I don't I need to try to I usually try to make sure that how I report bugs is not in a condescending manner, and I mean different kinds of things. Just being a good a human being, being sensitive about other people, because it could get really annoying when someone keeps on, if someone keeps on attacking your work, you can feel personally attacked. So try to make it not look that way. So I just say, oh, okay, this thing needs to be fixed. So I mean, it happens. Sometimes you may not even know that this bug is going to happen. Most of the time, you don't even want bugs to happen. So I try to check my language and try to learn how best to report the bugs. And then also I try to discuss expectations and define what is finished, like what is a good product with the developers and the other testers to make sure that I I report bugs that are relevant and in ways that are useful. So for this stage, I use a lot of recorder, like video recorders and screens, like the Paint 3D application, this screenshot feature, different kinds of things. And then I also at this stage I get a lot of feedback from the devs about, oh, this particular bug is not this or it's not that. Like I get to talk with the devs a lot at this stage, and then we're able to refine the bugs and refine our expectations of each other's work. So yeah, so the main stage really is to make sure that the devs are aware that these bugs exist. So it's now left for the more senior people to decide, oh, this can be left unfixed for now. This one needs to be fixed now. So that kind of things. But my job is to make sure that you know that this bug exists. And then lastly, the test cases. I think I have really spoken a lot about it, but just to touch base again, I think these test cases are they are important mostly for software that already exists. But I also am currently on a project that is in development that we haven't gone so far, and we have a lot of test cases, and I still find them useful for regression testing. and they help with black box testing because I also remember being on a project where I didn't know anything about the project, but by implementing the test, by running the test cases, I was able to better understand the product. Like I was able to see like hidden features. So these test cases were written by the senior tester, and yeah, it helped me a lot. And then we need to constantly update the test cases, update the language, update even the expectations, like what is the expected result. Sometimes because things change, we need to edit what is written in the test cases. So I mean that could be a drawback of having test cases, but I guess the pro outweighs the con here because the pro is you always have regression tests, so some areas that you from the beginning have foreseen would have potential problems, you get it covered real quick. So, but you just have to also make sure that you constantly update the test, not just run them and leave them, and then you see, oh, 5 tests passed out of 10, or 7, 10 tests passed out of 10, but those 10 tests are not relevant because they are not updated again. So, um, yeah, so like I said earlier, regression is really the main goal of that. And I also mentioned earlier that the testing happens like these different stages. Testing happens across board. Like it's that even though I call it a particular stage testing, but what I do across these different stages are still classified under testing. Okay, so thank you so much. That is all I have.
No, that was
What a
great, man.
great
Thank you so much for sharing
presentation.
that.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much. So many
thank
valuable
you.
gems in there. One thing that
Yeah.
stood out to me, and I really am curious, is um, the language part when it comes to bug reporting. I didn't even like think about like that step. What has
Mhm.
been the most and best ways to communicate when, because like it is kind of your baby when it's something, when it's a project that you're caring about and you're building it, and like this is, you own it, you feel like you own it.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
at where you come in, it's like, no, I see bugs right here. I expected to
Yeah.
see bugs. I see bugs all up in here. How do you present that back to them? It is, I feel like it is almost like a tug of war maybe between
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
QA and the
Mhm.
developer.
Yeah, well, yes, can be difficult, and I guess that's why from time to time I also join. I try to do some development. I mean, just to stay in touch with it. I try not to. I have like a golden rule not to write code for what I'm testing
Ooh.
because I think it reduces my objectivity. I feel like it would put me in the same headspace as the developers because I would be scared to find bugs. But anyway, I try to stay in touch somehow and write, and so just to be able to always understand where they're coming from. Sometimes things could get a bit on awkward. I mean, the dev could get upset because they've been working on this thing for like two
Hmm.
weeks and now they're done, and then you're telling them that there's a bug. Like it can
Hmm.
get really annoying. So well, I try to still convey the truth. Like I need to just tell you the truth, but I also try to say it in a way that is not condescending. I try to. I also learn from feedback. Like from time to time, I also learn when, oh, I didn't pass across this message right. And then also, I try to de-escalate sometimes when things are
Hmm.
getting too heated. I try to, yeah. I mean, sometimes I am the one who is upset because I mean, I don't know what. Maybe this thing it keeps happening. I don't know what, but different things. It could happen on both ends. So
Yes.
I mean, it's just really learning every day and learning from the mistakes, like from myself and from other people. I just try to keep learning and just communicate, and yeah, that's about it. I
Wow.
didn't really do like a language course. I just try to learn just the way you have friendships and you learn how best to develop good friendships. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
sort of that kind of idea that, oh, okay, I understand that this person has an emotional attachment to this thing because it's something they've put in a lot of effort. So I need to say the truth because that's the best
Hmm.
thing for this product. But at the same time, I need to do so in a way that won't make the person feel stupid.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah, but Sophie, but this was great. I feel like we covered so much, but I also feel like there's still so much more to cover.
Oh, most definitely.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
We definitely
yes,
love
it's
to have you come back like sometime in the future, talk more about like testing, maybe actually like see some of those tools that you talked about, because you talked about a whole
sure.
bunch of stuff. Like I think
Yeah.
bug magnet was one, and then Loom was
Yes.
another one, and then
I'm very
Yes.
curious about bug magnet.
yeah.
Yeah.
So with everything that you've covered so far, are there any like what's the one or two things you'd want folks to know about like software testing? Like, what do you think are like some of the most important things for particularly for folks that are just getting into it?
Okay. Well, first off, I would say to approach it relaxed, like in a relaxed way, like not having, first of all, that mindset of being a developer can make you get a bit uneasy when you start testing if you come from the development point of view. So that's why I say to be relaxed and to like just really let it sink in and get used to that whole idea of looking for bugs, not trying to fix bugs. That's if you're coming from a development um, point of view, if you're coming from a development environment. But if you're going in as a complete tester, well, it's to be creative and not allow yourself to be put in. I mean, to just like keep following. Oh, I've been told to do these test cases. Yes, it's important you do these test cases, but you need to also really understand it for yourself. You need to understand the software for yourself because it helps when you it helps you to be more creative and more innovative in how you test. So I think that creativity is important. So the test cases, yes, are good and are useful, but you need to make sure that you try to be as creative as possible. You stay in touch with other testers and learn from them, and really just have fun. Yeah.
No. Awesome. I think that's really good advice.
Awesome.
And I think that advice too, we could apply it to like a lot of other things inside of software development too, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but Sophie, again, thank you so much for coming on. I thought this was
Yes.
great. And thank
you,
everyone
Sam.
that's still watching us. If you have any comments or questions, definitely make sure you leave it in the little comment thing below the video. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you again next time on Insight.net.
Yeah.
All right. Well, bye, folks. See y'all later.
Bye.